welcome back to my channel and to another video in the Living in a Fantasy series. A series that I decided to create to give people a little bit more information and insight into what it's like being a crew member with Disney Cruise Line. So today's video is going to be all about the pros and the cons of working on a cruise ship. Obviously, it's not all happy living your best life in ports and on the ship like you see on social media. Sometimes it is tough. 90% of the time you're working. It is that 10% of the time that we post online just so people can see the kind of things that we do get up to, but the majority of the time you are working. So if that's not for you, then go on as a guest. But yeah, I thought I would come up with some pros and cons that would people would need to keep into consideration before they decide on becoming a crew member. So for every pro that I came up with, I have a con that either completely coincides with it or kind of is related to it in some way. I'm going to try and start and end on a positive note with those pros for you. So I'll start off with probably the most obvious one, most exciting pro, I would say, to working on a cruise ship, and that is the fact that you get paid to essentially travel the world, which is pretty amazing, I would say. I sometimes have to pinch myself at the thought of the fact that my job is to travel, and not a lot of people, obviously other than people that do work in other parts of the travel industry, not many people get to say that that is their job and that they get to see some incredible places all around the world that I had only dreamed of ever visiting at some point in my life. Never thought that at the age I am now I would have visited them already, and so regularly as well. And it is such an unbelievable experience, and it's amazing that we do get to travel to some bucket list worthy places in our time working on the ships. So that is definitely a big pro, I would say. But obviously with that pro comes a con, and because of the fact that you are traveling a lot of the time, you are away for the majority of the year, that does mean that you do miss out on some things that happen at home with family, friends. You miss out on a lot of events, things like Christmases, birthdays, maybe somebody's having a baby, maybe you have a family vacation that you usually go on every year that you're not able to do, maybe a family get-together that is happening for some reason. It is difficult, and you know, sometimes if you do stop to think about it for too long, you do get a bit bummed at the fact that you are away for a lot of the time, and that you do miss these kind of things, and that life does sort of go ahead without you there when you're on the ship. Obviously you're busy a lot of the time, so you don't have to think about these things too much, but yeah, it can be a little bit sad thinking about all the things that you do miss out on when you are on the ship. That is the life that you choose to have whilst being a crew member, so that's sort of comes with the job really. That's what you come to expect, to miss out on a lot of those things. So if you are a homebody, you do like being home for all of these kind of things, and you do get homesick quite easily, maybe cruise life isn't for you. Another pro, I would say, to working on a cruise ship is the fact that you don't have those added living expenses. So for instance, if you have your regular 9-to-5 job, you're at home and you have your own house, you don't have to pay for things like taxes. You don't have to pay for electric, gas, water, food. You don't have to pay for travel expenses to and from your job, because that's all there for you already on the ship. You don't have to pay for those kind of things. So that's a pretty great thing, because if you are pretty good with your money and budgeting, then you can probably save a lot of money and put it towards other things that aren't those household utilities that you would usually have at home. Obviously sometimes, because you're not spending on those kind of things, you do end up blowing your budget and your money on a lot of other things that you probably don't need. But you know, I would say it's pretty big thing that you don't have to pay for any of those household items and utilities and things like that, because you are living on a cruise ship most of the time, so you don't need to pay for those things. So that is that pro. Keeping in contact with family can sometimes be a little bit difficult because of the fact that you do have to pay for Wi-Fi. So obviously where you save money on utilities and household things, you do spend it a lot on Wi-Fi to keep in contact with family and friends. I know a lot of people who don't talk to their family for a week, and they only talk to them on port days if we get signal. Like for instance, a lot of my American friends don't contact their family until we get to our terminal on a embark day, because that's the only time that they get signal, and they don't want to pay for Wi-Fi, which can get a little bit sad if you're not in contact with your family. I know for me, I like to talk to my parents. I message them every day, so obviously with that in mind, I did spend a lot of money on Wi-Fi a lot of the time. More recently, in 2019, at the end of 2019, Disney Cruise Line in general, they started a feature where it was free messaging for apps like WhatsApp, iMessage, and maybe Messenger. I can't remember. But that was really good because it meant that you can keep in contact with your family and friends back home without worrying about having to constantly buy Wi-Fi packages. So yeah, that's definitely a downside, is although you are saving money in some ways, you are wasting it on messaging and Wi-Fi and all of those kind of things, because like I said, I've mentioned it before in my videos, Wi-Fi is not free and it is not cheap to be able to pay for Wi-Fi. But you have family on the ship, you make friends, and those people become like your second family. So where you don't have the family to talk to at home, you have them on the ship. So it swings and roundabouts really. So I've mentioned just now, because you're away a lot of the time and you don't get to do things at home a lot of the time because you're missing out on these things, you don't have a lot of time to think about that because you're constantly busy. So I guess that's a pro and a con in one way, where you don't always get to see things happening at home and you do miss out on them a lot of the time, but because you are constantly working, you're constantly busy, you're not always thinking about it and you're not always down all the time, and you have people around you to keep your spirits up and you're not always miserable. But if you're pretty good at keeping yourself busy and keeping your mind active, then it's not so bad. So that is a pro, is that you're always busy, so there's not always time to dwell on the things that you are missing out on. But because you are always busy, a con is that, if you didn't know, crew members don't get days off, contrary to popular belief. Yeah, we don't get days off. We're always working all of the week, every single day, long hours. I don't know why, but the majority of the people I talk to when I talk about working on a cruise ship, they're like, wait, you work every day? Yes, we do work every day. We don't work 9 to 5. We work 9 to midnight sometimes. Obviously we have breaks in between. Sometimes people work even later than that, and it's a very long day, it's very tiring, so a lot of the time we are exhausted. And although we do post sometimes about living our best lives and having a great time off the ship, we are also 90% of the time very tired and constantly working, because that's the life of a crew member. We don't get days off. So if you don't want to work every single day of your life on the cruise ship for 4 or 5 plus months at a time, with like 6 to 8 weeks in vacation in between to recuperate, then maybe cruising isn't for you. Although we are living our best lives, seemingly working on a cruise ship, traveling the world, that is to the expense of hardly any sleep, always working, hardly any social life. So there's that. A pro to working on cruise ships is that you form such tight-knit bonds with people from all around the world. Like I said before, they become like your family, and you know, you can really rely on them if you are missing out on things at home and you're down about something, or I don't know, you're just having a bad day. You have these people to rely on, and you know that they're always going to have your back. Even when you're on land and you've been off the ship for an XYZ amount of time, you know that you can still rely on those people. You can reach out to them and they're always going to be there for you, because you go through such an experience together while working on the cruise ships. You know, there's not a lot of people that I know in my life that have experienced that, other than the people that I have met on the cruise ships. Like before working for Cruise Line, I knew nobody that worked on a cruise ship really, and had experienced the life that I'd lived on the ship. So when I came home from vacations, it would be like, oh yeah, this happened, and people would be really confused because they'd be like, I don't really know how to relate to that. So you always have these people to relate to. You always have them to be there for you no matter what, and they will be there for you at the drop of a hat, because they are your family now. It's really great. Honestly, some of the people that I've met on the ships are like my favourite people in the whole entire world, and they're like my bestest friends, even though a lot of the time you only know these people for like months at a time, and then suddenly they're your best friend. I know if I wasn't on the ships, if I'd have met somebody like 3 months ago, I wouldn't say they're my best friend. I would say they're a good friend, but maybe it would take me a little bit longer to create that bond. But because you are always seeing each other, working together, constantly on the ship, you're living with them and everything like that, that bond does form quicker. And I've mentioned it before, time works differently on the ships, so that's why these bonds do form quicker. So yeah, that is a huge pro for me, is the people that you meet and yeah, experience, as well as the guests that you meet as well from all around the world. They can become good friends of yours if they're constantly cruising and you're seeing them all the time and you get to know them. It's a really lovely place to be on the ships, seeing all the people that you do meet. It's great. Okay, a con to that is the fact that because you are always seeing these people all the time, sometimes the lines between work and private life, etc. can blur, so it feels like you can not always differentiate between those things. So if something's going on in your personal life, it can sometimes affect you at work, and because you're seeing the same people that you would see in your downtime as to you were seeing at work. Let's say, for instance, if you had a workplace conflict, sometimes you can't always put that to bed as much as you would like to, because you're then seeing them backstage in crew areas and you're like, oh, that person's really annoyed me. It can be hard to sort of put that aside and just go to work because it's just happened and that's your whole life that you're living. Like sometimes with those workplace conflicts or things that happen on the ship, it's like everything is intensified to the max. So if something very minor has happened in your day, it can feel like the worst thing that's ever happened in your whole entire life, because everything gets blown out of proportion on the ship, because yeah, everything is heightened and that's your whole life, that's all you know. So sometimes it's difficult to find that alone time to just gather your thoughts and just to just breathe for a little bit and just to sort of figure out how you're going to deal with that situation in your mind, because yeah, people are always there around you. You're seeing the same people at work, you're seeing the same people backstage, you're living with these people, so it's not always easy if you like your downtime by yourself to just gather your thoughts without other people interfering. Then that's not always easy to do on the ship because you're always surrounded by people. So yeah, alone time not always easy, and those lines can blur between personal life and working life, because that is your whole life. Another pro I would say to working on a cruise ship is the fact that there are a lot of crew activities going on to keep you going and to keep you entertained, and so it's not just constantly work, work, work. Yeah, there is a crew activities manager usually who organises these things. They're amazing. They work all hours of the day trying to make sure that the crew members are entertained and they've got something to do, so there'll be things going on all the time to keep you entertained. So just off the top of my head, things like trivia and sports, gaming. Sometimes they have things for religious purposes. They have movie premieres for us. Sometimes they'll organise some trips off the ship in specific ports for us to go and do. So yeah, there's always things going on. There's obviously the crew bar and things like that, and just chill out areas where there's something to do and hang out with your friends. So that is really fun, that you do have that downtime to unwind for a little bit after you've worked all day. And it's really great that they do think about the things that the crew members are going to want to do in their spare time when they're not working, to unwind and to, yeah, really take care of yourself. So a con to that as well is the fact that it's sometimes hard to find a work life and social life balance, because of the fact that your whole life is on the ship. Like I've mentioned before, you don't have the same hours that people usually do at home on land to have that social time. You have to squeeze it in at really weird times of the day. Like sometimes you'll have to do it first thing in the morning, or like during a break in the middle of the day, or at midnight, and after that while you are done with work, because a lot of the time that is the time people finish work. So it's not always easy to find that balance. You do get a bit burned out sometimes, because sometimes you're going to want to do things with your friends after work all the time, but like I said, your hours are not always the same, and their hours are not always the same. So do keep that in mind as well, the fact that you can burn out quite easily and get a bit run down, because you are constantly trying to fit all of these things in that usually would be quite easy when you're at home. And then the final pro that I'm going to finish off with, like I said, wanted to finish on a pro, is the fact that it's such a unique, once-in-a-lifetime experience. You'll get to do things you'd only ever imagined that you'd get to do in your wildest dreams. You get to visit bucket list worthy places like I mentioned just now. You get to work such a rewarding job, working so closely with amazing guests and creating those lasting memories with them, and you get to form such strong bonds with people and just have the time of your life. I know it's cheesy to say that, but yeah, it's such an amazing experience. If you're thinking of becoming a crew member at some point whenever cruising does officially start again in the future, definitely do it, because it's definitely been and is still one of the most amazing things that I've ever done in my life. Like I said as well, there's pros, there's cons, but that's the same in life in general anyway. There's always pros and cons to everything, so consider those. But yeah, definitely do it if you are thinking about it, because I have not regretted it once. So yeah, that is all I have for you today. If you liked this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. I have more videos like this talking about my experience working on the cruise ships. I will link the playlist to those videos down below for you. If you want to see more content from me, don't forget to subscribe. That would be really amazing if you could do that. And I will see you next time in another video. Goodbye.